I'm really excited to be here today. I'll tell you how excited I am. I actually had back surgery like 2.5 weeks ago, and much to the chagrin of my doctor and certainly my wife, I got on a flight from Florida to come up here to be here with you guys. So if I look a little bit stilted, or if you disagree with what I say today, you can just say, "Did you guys see that stiff that was speaking at that event earlier?" So it's not on purpose that I turn kind of a little bit like a robot, but as Randy alluded to, I am really excited to be here today. I've got a pretty unique background because I spent time working. I started at the OEM level, then I worked at the retail dealership level. I've worked basically almost every chair in a dealership. Started on the e-commerce side, built a marketing department, worked as a finance manager, general sales manager, and then eventually a GM for about 4 or 5 years. And then worked on the dealer side of the space, on the vendor side of the space with dealer.com for a long period of time. And oh, by the way, Dave, in my experience of working with Dave, I've always thought you were a little flowery in your language, so that worked exactly. It was great. But in that experience and all the nearly 20 years that I've spent in the car business, I've always been committed to trying to improve the automotive industry, both for the retail dealer so that we can continue to maintain this profitable industry that I'm so passionate about, but also for the consumer. And as we continue to try to address their ever-changing needs and behaviors so that ultimately we can provide a better car buying experience, which both Kevin and Dave talked about. So I promise you one thing about my time that I'm going to spend with you this morning. I'm going to challenge your thinking, right? And I'm going to try to do that not with an opinion about what I think, because you get a lot of that when you come to these marketing type of events. Here's what I think you should do. Rather, I'm going to share with you some insights, what I can prove, right? What I know, not what my point of view is on certain things. So in building transparency, when I was a GM, I always had 2 very simple questions. As I dealt with vendors and the advertising partners that would come into my dealership, I always tried to say, can somebody please, just for the love of God, answer these 2 simple questions? How many cars did I sell, and how much money did I make for that advertising investment or for that campaign? So when my partner and I founded Transparency and we put together the solution in attribution, those are the questions we try to answer every single day. How can we help you at the dealership level answer those questions? How many cars did I sell? How much money did I make, right? So Transparency is an independent data analytics and BI firm, and we've got a patent methodology that gives us the ability to match the anonymous online shopper to a specific offline transaction. So what does that mean in simple English, right? As these guys talked about, consumers prefer to shop anonymously. And although I'll talk a lot about the car business, I'm famous for giving analogies outside of the car business. So think about if you guys were on Expedia. Obviously, I travel a bunch. And let's say you're on Expedia and then you're looking for a hotel or a flight, and I'm an SPG guy, so let's say you try to find a Westin property. We stayed at a nice Element that's over here by the airport when we came in for this event. But you know, let's say you find a Westin property that you're interested in staying at, but you're also that SPG member, right? And you want to get credit for the points during your stay. So you jump off of Expedia and you go book through the Westin site directly, right? Because who cares about booking through Expedia? Well, at Transparency, we can prove that you started on Expedia and tie that back to the exact hotel room you stayed in and how much money you spent while you were there, okay? So being able to match the anonymous online consumer to the specific transaction is what we've been doing in the States, working with the large publisher clients, and what I'm excited to share with you guys today is bringing that work to Canada. And why I would challenge you to do some direct, tangible takeaways from what we talk about today is that there are not 1,000 dealers in the room. There's about 100 of us, right? So you have the opportunity to put into practice something that would give you a distinct advantage within your marketplace ahead of the competition. Because what I'm talking about today, from my point of view, is not going to be something that a few dealers do. It's where we're headed as an industry. It's what the consumer is already expecting of us in their behavior, and we've got to align with what the consumer is trying to drive as an experience when they come in to buy a car, right? So when we go to try to find this anonymous shopper, one of the unique things about our approach is we don't use any cookies or any tracking pixels, because obviously that falls apart, right? if I'm a consumer and I'm on a desktop and I'm starting to search and my behavior's been cookied so you guys can retarget me, I jump off of that and I jump over to my mobile device, you lose me. Even if I'm on my desktop and I've got 2 different browsers open, I do that all the time. I'm in Chrome and I'll have Safari open on my Mac, right? You can't track me across those 2 different browsers, right? You're going to lose me. If I go to my house and I log on to a different computer that happens to be my wife is already logged in as Facebook, you're going to think with that cookie that I'm her, right? So cookies don't work when you're trying to prove attribution, right? And when we're trying to solve this problem, of how do we define the real ROI for my investment, you can't make that determination based on the number of leads that you receive. And I know these other guys just talked about that a little bit, but I really want to drive the point home. And I keep picking on Amazon in a lot of the things that I do, and it's not unique to the car business, right? The consumer has been conditioned in their shopping behavior by everything else that they do. And by the way, when I say the consumer, I really mean you. Because it's not like we operate differently when we shop versus everybody else, right? We all shop the same way. So I just pulled up here because I was actually looking for, when I'm doing my rehab, I have to actually run less and I've got to start cycling. So I'm looking for a little commuter bike so I can get back and forth to work. This is just a byproduct of what I'm going to have to start doing, right? But think about this for a second. When you're looking for something on Amazon, right, you don't, if the product doesn't have an accurate description of all the features and things that go with that product, you don't sit there and think to yourself, well, I'm not really sure, is this a 3-speed or a 7-speed? Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to send a lead to that retailer and ask them a question. Or better yet, is there a phone number? I'm going to try to call them and say, do you have that in red and also black? You don't do that as a consumer. You just move to the very next one that's in the listing, because if they didn't merchandise it properly, you're out. You're moving to the next guy, right? But if you think about that at what we do in the car business, and I pulled this by way of example literally yesterday, 2 Lexus dealers in the Orlando market or in the Florida market, right? And I still am stunned by the fact that this is how ignorant we treat the consumer, right? You've got over here, contact us for price. And then, and you probably can't see this here, but as far as the colors are concerned, like, atomic silver, emulate white pearl, matador red mica. I don't even know what that means, right? So and it's a template. So, and over here, they just applied it a little bit differently, actual real photos of the cars and color tiles, because I know that that's red. I have no idea that it's a matador red mica, but I know it's red, right? Simple, basic things that we can all apply today, right? And to further drive home the point that we actually work with this large dealer group that's in Ohio, and I've gotten to be good friends with the COO that's there, and he has all of his marketing folks in each of the dealership challenged at the close of the sales meeting on Saturday mornings. They do a random audit of all of the leads that they've received in the last week to figure out what they did wrong with the merchandising of that car online. I said that right. They actually look at leads like it was a bad thing. They screwed up and they didn't put something properly online, because why else is the customer sending them a lead? Phone calls are great. They're all about the phone calls. But the actual lead itself, did they not? We also have this in 14 different colors. Yes, it has Bluetooth. It's available in a 4x4. You can get this additional accessory. They literally are looking at all the ways that they can try to eliminate the need for the consumer to have to fill out this lead, because they're also very cognizant of the fact of what happens in the automated email follow-up process when that customer actually submits a lead, right? We're all shaking heads. We know what that's like. As a consumer, if you doubt what I'm talking about, go shopping for a car and watch the generic nonsense that you get back. To make this point, how many GMs do I have in the room? Oh, great. I love this. Okay. So do you get friends and family and people that obviously know you that want to buy a car? Do you like referral deals on a monthly basis? Right, sure. Most of you guys that are GMs do that, right? We all know people, and we've got an extended network. When I ran a store, I'd probably do 20 deals a month of people that were folks that I know that contacted me, right? So by way of show of hands, those same GMs, if you have a friend or a family member, somebody that's coming to you directly, do any of you just say to that friend or family member, hey, just come to the store and ask for any of our salespeople? No. Why? Because you know the process stinks, right? This is what I used to do. I can only speak about my store. I don't want to say the process stinks, but I can only talk about my store. I would say to my friend or family member, come ask for me directly. Or let me put you directly with Jim, right? Now, what are you currently driving? Okay, great, we'll get you an appraisal value for your car. We'll have most of the paperwork ready. We're going to make this really, really simple, okay? That's what we do for the referrals, okay? My average gross at my store on referrals was about within $100 a copy of what we did on the average for everything else. So if we can do that for all the people that I really care about, how come we can't do that for everybody is my challenge to you, right? It's faster, it's easier, we meet the expectations, we try to streamline the process for the customer. So speaking to what Dave spoke about, speaking to what Kevin spoke about, if you remember nothing else from today, you've got to go back and inspect the process at your dealership, because you can spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on digital marketing and an online presence, and if the in-store experience doesn't mirror that or match that, you've wasted a ton of money. Okay? If the salesperson greets the customer and says, yeah, and what kind of Toyota were you looking for? And you're like, oh, I already did all this. I did all of this online and I'm all ready to go, right? This is the reality of our industry, trying to meet those expectations. A little bit off track of what I'm talking about today, but again, wanted to give you some context to where we're going with this, okay? Make sense? So, let's see here. Get this to fire through. Yes, our little arrows pointed to those things. Okay, so let's talk about what a transactional attribution study is, right? Obviously, we talked about the Expedia example, but millions of customers come to aggregate marketplace, third-party sites like autoTRADER.ca on a monthly basis, but very, very few of them actually submit a lead. They use these sites to gather information, multiple devices, multiple sessions, and the vast majority just end up walking into the dealership to make a purchase. Some subset will actually contact you through a 1-800 tracking phone number or submit a lead, but the vast majority are anonymous to you, right? As educated as any internet customer that you're ever going to run into, but they just walk into the dealership to make a purchase, right? And you're blind to what they did in advance of coming in, right? What we do is start to give them some insight into that entire audience so that you can finally answer the real ROI in, what is my true cost of sale calculation, okay? Here's how we do that. But actually, before I do that, I wanted to talk about this. How do we get here, right? Why are we having this discussion? And it all starts with the fact, when I was on the retail side of the car business, when I left the OEM, went to work on the retail side of the space, it was in the late 90s, early 2000s, and it was right at about the beginning of when internet started to, in e-commerce, started to make its presence known in our industry, right? So all of the CRM companies, back at the time, we were trying to track how many leads we got from AutoBytel or AutoUSA or all those types of places, remember, right? So the CRM companies built this categorization for us by the types of customers, right? And it basically was 4 nondescript categories. Either you were a walk-in, you were an internet lead, you were a phone-up, or some nondescript other, okay? Fast forward almost 20 years later, this is still the foundation of all the CRM solutions that we have today, right? Still have this at your stores today? You've got walk-ins and internet leads and phone-ups and some other category. Guess what, folks? There is no such thing as a walk-in. How else are they going to get there? But did they come in on a hoverboard? Right? That sounds ridiculous, but stay with me for a second. Let's imagine if they did, okay? I could say to Dave, Dave, just had another hoverboard customer that just came in, right? All right, put them down in the CRM. And then Dave would come to me at the end of the month and he'd say, Jesus, those things are really, really popular. We had 157 hoverboard customers this month. Well, you know what we should do? We should hire a hoverboard department manager because, these hoverboard customers, they've got special needs. We've got to create a different process for them because if you don't treat them right, they'll just float right out of the dealership. They won't even buy a car. Right? Sounds ridiculous, correct? Let me ask you a question. How many of you have an internet sales department? Come on, give me an answer, all right? I'm not trying to put anybody out of work or change job descriptions, but again, in 2017, no such thing as an internet sales customer. They're all online. Now, there's a subset of them that the CRM is classifying as this internet customer because they chose to contact you and give you their information via the internet, but all of them are online. All of them, okay? So trying to classify customers by a walk-in, which doesn't exist, or an internet lead is just fundamentally incorrect. And I think we can all agree to that at this point, right? So if you then carry that across, and then you're pulling at the end of each month your CRM sourcing report, which I was as guilty of as anybody you're ever going to find. Matter of fact, I have a good friend within a top 10 publicly traded dealer group within the United States. Prior to doing work with us, they had like 6 people across their 90-some-odd dealerships that would pull that CRM sourcing report at the end of each month, trying to back into attribution, trying to prove the value of the investment that they made with XYZ vendor. We spent $5,000 with them, and how many car deals did we get, right? Well, if the foundation is built incorrectly, then why in the world am I looking at that CRM sourcing report? So again, here's another one if you want to do as a direct takeaway. CRM stands for Customer Relationship Management Solution, okay? It is critical to you running your business. What it is not is a marketing decision management tool. And you should make none, I'll be clear about that, none of your marketing decisions based on what your CRM sourcing report is telling you, because it's just bad info. Okay? So, what we're trying to do is give you the insight of the real value of that audience, of all those anonymous customers that help to supplement the 15 to 20% of the internet customers that you actually can track by source. So here's how we do that. And I wanted to spend a little bit of time, I won't go too geek out on you too much here, but talking about our process. I'll use myself by way of example. Again, our process starts differently than almost anybody else when you're talking about attribution in the fact we don't use any cookies, no tracking pixels, right? Instead, we start with the one data source that you at the dealership level have the most faith in, and that's your own data. I'll use myself by way of example. If Darren Haygood comes in to buy a car from you at your dealership, you're going to see my name, my address, my email, my phone number, the exact vehicle I purchased, how much money you made on me on that sale. If I come back in for service, all the ROs that I did, right? All of that's going to be right there in your DMS. There would not be some subjective debate of you guys saying to me, Darren, I'm not really sure you're a real customer. I'm not really sure you own that car, right? Obviously, there's credibility because it's your own data, right? It's also not your CRM data. And we don't do anything trying to match attribution against CRM data, and I'll only ask you this one question. How many of you GMs finalize your accounting file at the end of each month and reconcile your accounting statement off of your CRM data? Laughs, good. I got one laugh over here. So at least you don't do that. You finalize it out of the DMS because that's the actual finalized deal that's got the F&I, that has everything booked out in there appropriately, right? So that's what you finalize, and that's the data source that we use, okay? So I'm there in your record. That's the first step. We onboard your first-party data. Second step, at transparency, we identify the IP address of the customers within your market. Again, where I live just outside of Orlando, I'm an AT&T Uverse customer, so I have a unique IP address that's associated with my physical address where I live. It's a 192.0.11. something, right? The Wi-Fi at my house, okay? Now, that IP is not associated with my name, because if it was, that would violate consumer privacy regulations and all kinds of PII laws, right? But it is associated with my physical address. So as simple as this might sound, our process is dependent on that address being the anchor and the lowest common denominator, because it's the same physical address that's right there in your DMS. Okay? Think about basically direct mail, and we've digitized it, right, down to the household. But I've still got to protect the identity of the Darren Haygoods of the world. So my name turns into an anonymized random transparency 12345 with an IP address of a 192.0.11. something, physical address of X, and now I've got a matched record. I can then go out to any publisher, in this case the lovely folks here at AutoTrader Canada, and say, pass us the millions of IP addresses that hit your site on a determinate period of time. We load those into our database, cross-reference against those matched anonymized IDs, and then I can generate a transactional attribution study for you folks. It's a long, fancy way to go to basically say, customer was on Trader Canada. I can tie that back to the exact vehicle that they purchased at your dealership. Make sense? By the way, mobile is included. So, I mean, I'm just cutting to, Randy is going to get a question about that later when you're up to the microphone, so I'm just going to skip to that right now. Obviously, I'm an iPhone guy here. I was talking about AT&T a minute ago. This device, not associated with my name, has no idea who I am. It has its own unique device ID, right? If I were to cancel AT&T and give them back my phone, they'd wipe it clean, they'd go sell it to somebody else. But if you do what I do, and what most consumers do, is I go home at the end of each night and I plug in my iPhone and it syncs with the Wi-Fi at my house. And now I've got you. Because if you do that enough times within a 30-day given cycle, our algorithm can look at it and say, this device belongs to this customer that lives at this physical address, and now I've got all the mobile activity as well. That's usually the freak out point where people go, oh God, nothing is sacred anymore, right? Right? So, so that's how the process works for us, right? I'd say process, but you guys probably actually say it the right way. So that's how we do what we do, right? To be able to actually start to give you insights into the value of that entire audience. The reports look something like this, right? It's basically going to give you the matching size of the audience, how many of those people we can match to an IP address, out of that audience, how many folks actually came in and bought a car. When we onboard your data, we capture 5 years worth of data, not just the last 60 or 90 days. Here's why we do that. If Darren Haygood was a match and I bought a car from your dealership in the last quarter, I want to look back in your DMS and say, has Darren ever been in here before? Has he ever purchased a car from us previously, or has he ever serviced with us previously? If the answer is no, I've now identified a unique conquest or first-time sale, as we call it, customer for your dealership, right? So what you'll see on these reports is not only the matching audience, but the subset of that audience that is new business for you. When I was a general manager, I was always charged with how can I help? I mean, I'm basically the marketing director at the store. That's what the GM's job is. Process and drive in business, right? Make the right advertising decisions and keep people moving through the door, right? What if I were to tell you that, the publisher investments that you're making is some of the best money you can spend to drive new business, okay? And I'm not going to speculate on that. We're going to find out because I'm really excited to see what we find and what we learn here in Canada. What we know in the States is we've done case studies with several of the other large publishers. We've done almost 4,000 studies in the last year and a half across all the United States, different brands, different demographic, and the numbers are consistent almost every single time, okay? So it's pretty exciting stuff for us, but just to wrap up a couple of things about how I want to drive home the point about thinking about this differently, because it doesn't matter if you don't change the mindset and the behavior and take tangible action, right? So again, I'll go back to our lovely friends at Amazon. And let's say that I'm selling some sort of widget, right? So you've got Joe's Widgets, right? And then Joe created this lovely little website, joeswidgets.com. Now, if I'm selling Joe's Widgets, the last thing I'm going to do is spend tens, if not 20s of thousands of dollars on a monthly basis trying to get joeswidgets.com to show up on Google, right? Way too competitive of a landscape, too hard to try to get that site to optimize, too competitive on keywords, and on and on and on and on. So as fast as I can, I'm going to try to make sure that my product is on Amazon because that's where all the customers are, right? And if a few of them happen to come in Joe's Widgets, great. I've also got a nice site there that hopefully with Dave's advice you've made it a little more flowery and a little more branded, right? But in the car business, our good friends at the big company with the colorful bicycles have convinced us that Joe's Widgets or DarrenAutos.com, by way of example, is the most important site on the planet. And you need to spend all the money you can to try to get customers to come there directly, right? I'm just telling you, you need to re-look at the numbers, right? Because what the consumer trusts is an independent third-party aggregate site. Just go back to what I was talking about at the very beginning. I'm an SPG loyalist, right? I try to stay at Starwood Properties almost anywhere I go. Love the experience there. Love the way, they're doing some great things with a couple different hotels within their brand, right? So I'm kind of a junkie on the SPG side. Whenever I travel, I never start at spg.com, right? Because I don't want to miss a deal. And there might be a deal at a Marriott property or a Hilton property in the market that I'm traveling to that's better. So I always start at an aggregator place to gather information. And then once I confirm that, I'll go down to the local retailer site to do the booking if I need to. Same thing happens every single day in the car business, right? Merchandising matters, Reviews matter, but you want to have your inventory and your product where all of the people are, and that's on the aggregator. Okay? So the last two things I'll leave you with is to challenge these legacy digital marketing metrics. And listen, and there's a lot of folks, how many internet sales or e-commerce or marketing directors are in here? Folks, right? Okay? So we've loved this stuff. I mean, listen, I was a party to contributing to this, right? A lot of us have gotten our jobs because the other, the operational folks didn't understand this stuff. Clicks, leads, impressions, CPM, view-through rate, right? I actually asked, when I was talking with one of the trader guys earlier, I spoke at a conference one time, and I asked the whole room, I said, if I said SEM, or if I said PPC, or if I said CPL, or if I said bounce rate, or if I said impressions, how many of you would know what I'm talking about? Every hand went up in the room, okay? I said, keep your hands up if you could explain to me what absorption rate means, and what net to gross means, and what obsolescence means. A lot of hands went, right? So in this industry, we've made up a bunch of stuff in vernacular that people don't understand. It's not how we act, it's not what really matters in the car business, right? From an operator standpoint. So if we start taking a different look at all of this, which is great to talk about the audience and the visitors and how much of those people came to your site or to your dealership, right? But from our standpoint, trying to answer these simple questions so that we don't have to continue to build into the ADD problem. Anybody know what that stands for? Last thing we need in this industry is another damn dashboard. Jesus. We have a jar at our office, right, that if you say dashboard, you have to put money in the jar. It's like a penalty jar, right? That's why our reports kind of look clunky and ugly like a spreadsheet, because everybody can read a spreadsheet, right? So we're not building any dashboards at our company. But we don't need any more of these. We have plenty of them, right? Most operators and GMs and owners that I work with, they don't spend a ton of time looking at dashboards every single day. They look at line 19 on the statement and see what my true net to gross is and how much money I made at the dealership, right? So that's what we try to contribute to. Define success by the outcome, not by the visitor, not by the audience. But what did they do, right? Did they buy something? Did they come in and do service with you? How much of that audience is new business for you? And then, how much money did you make? And I feel confident that as an industry, we're headed there, right? All of the other engagement metrics are great, but we can finally plug in the answer to those other things at the very end, okay? I appreciate your time this morning. Thanks so much for having me. If you have questions afterwards, again, they're going to circle this around, but you can visit us online at transparency.ai, not .com, .ai. And of course, all of my information is there as well. So I really appreciate you guys being here this morning, and I hope you got a good couple takeaways you can take back to the store. All right? Thanks.